Hello everyone and welcome to the download from 24 IT Services. We've got another brilliant show lined up today with actually a guest that has been on before. We were originally supposed to have our very own Tony Houlihan, our CTO, come to join us this week to talk about, well, supply chain attacks. However, he's being very selfish and he's raising money for charity this week. I know. I'm joking, obviously. He's raising money for Military versus Cancer. He will be coming on instead on our show on June 11th, where we have some extra special, absolutely brilliant news that I'm really, really looking forward to being able to share with you all. But this week, we are instead joined by, and I best change over to my co-host. We've met her before. Sarah!
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I know it's like middle of the day now. Good afternoon. But yes, so we're going to be talking about some news across the cyber and IT worlds across this past week, as well as talking about our topic for today, which, as I have mentioned already, is supply chain attacks. Let's get into the news story for this week, which is, of course, the gift that keeps on giving, the M&S Cyber Attack. So, this past week, it was revealed by the Financial Times that Tata Consultancy Services, part of the Tata Group, who provide IT services for Marks & Spencer, have launched an internal investigation to establish whether it was the cause of the attack. Previous reports have indicated that cyber criminals managed to convince M&S Cyber Team to be able to reset one or more of passwords of the business to be able to gain access to them. TCS has apparently, and I was very surprised to be able to read this, 607,000 employees across 55 countries, and their portfolio also includes Co-op. M&S chief Stuart Machin, I think that's how you pronounce his name, said this past week, "We didn't leave the door open. This wasn't anything to do with underinvestment. Everyone is vulnerable. For us, we were just unlucky on this particular day through some human error." With many employees and different things like that, how do you know that? Well, sorry, let me reword this. With this many employees, 607,000 employees that TCS actually employ, how do you know that all of these people have the right skills and knowledge and even responsibility to be able to look after so many users, do you think, Sarah?
I think it's an interesting one. Having worked for a multinational corporate tech company with not that many people, I was Googling, wasn't I, the other day, and I think
Yeah.
we had about 20,000 employees, which felt like a real load at the time, and now it's like that pales into insignificance. I think it's an interesting point to wonder how they're set up.
Yeah.
So do they have specific people that deal with specific clients? So do they have a team specifically for Marks and Spencers? Because
And if so,
I
how
worked as
big is
part of
that
this.
team?
Yeah, exactly. I worked as a really small team, so there was 6 or 7 of us on our team that looked after the specific ERP system that I looked after in the UK, basically.
Yeah.
So if you were a client, you would know if you had a tech issue, you would speak to either me or my colleague who worked out of Birmingham.
Yeah.
There was literally 2 of us. So that kind of builds that relationship. Whereas if you're talking about a team of potentially hundreds, even if they, or thousands or the whole
Yeah.
company, how does that work? How do you build that relationship? How do you know who you're talking to?
Not
How do
only
you learn
that,
about your
like,
client?
yeah, do these people understand the particular needs of a client? Do they understand
Mm,
their infrastructure? Do they, even just down to the types of certifications and background and experience,
yeah.
like, how do you keep track of all of this and ensure that these right people have the right knowledge and experience to look after
Mm,
businesses the size of M&S, for example?
yeah.
I know it's a really challenging one, and I know that we've spoken about this. And let me preface this by saying this is complete speculation. This maybe not even has happened. This is just a what if scenario.
Mm,
What if it was some form of combined inside job with one of
yeah.
these 607,000 employees potentially working with a cyber criminal organization to be able to find a way to be able to gain access to one of these accounts? Again, this is a what if scenario.
Mm,
This has actually happened, of course, not at all.
no.
But what if 607,000 people, how can you keep track of if any of those could potentially have relationships with cybercriminal organizations.
It doesn't take much though, does it? This is the thing. I mean, it's like if you think about that volume of workforce,
Yeah.
it only takes one person to be disgruntled in any way, shape, or form to then build that relationship with a malicious actor external to the business
Yeah.
to then compromise quite a lot. It's the biggest understatement of the week, isn't it? But
Oh,
if
yeah.
you know, if you look at the number of stores that have been impacted in Marks and Spencer's, the co-op, alone,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even know how many stores they've got between them. But if you think about the impact of that, that only needs one person.
Yeah.
And we said this last time we spoke, didn't we? One person to sort of like be the weakest link in the chain,
Yeah.
then the whole lot kind of
Crumbles as a result.
and does what it's done for the last
Yeah.
how many weeks now are we on? It's like it must be since Easter, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's
And the other thing to consider as well because of
mm,
this is that for someone's account to be compromised, were they at a senior enough level as well that
mm,
potentially someone, I don't know, these cyber criminals could have been using AI voice cloning to be able to reproduce the voice of someone senior within the business.
yeah. We had this conversation, didn't we, yesterday
Yeah.
when we were talking about this topic about like basically cloning Tony.
Yeah.
Somebody could clone Tony and sorry Tony, but they could. And literally, that could be used in a malicious way. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not in the realms of imagination anymore, is it? This is actually can happen.
Yeah.
And if you think about if you were sort of like a junior member on the team and somebody, several levels up phones you in inverted
Yeah.
commas and says, I need you to do this. Well, how many people would sit there and go, actually, no, I'm not doing that?
Yeah.
Most people would turn around and say, yeah, of course I will.
Well, just think back to
So
that
it's
attack where the business was convinced to be able to, or the finance manager or something like that, I'd have to get all the information again, was convinced to be able to like transfer the equivalent of what was it, 25 million?
25,000
I,
million squillion pounds. It
yeah,
was
it
a
was
lot.
like across so many different transactions because
Mm,
they were on a Teams call with an
mm,
AI deepfake voice and photo, like voice and video of
mm.
like their CFO and CEO,
Yeah.
COO, and different people within the company who had convinced them to be able to make these transactions. Like, how do you prevent against that sort of attack when someone is potentially calling in and pretending to be someone, whether it's through AI voice cloning or not? Like, how can you even begin to prevent against that sort of attack, whether it's trying to transfer financials or
Mm,
reset a password? I mean, okay, in our business, for example, and I can't speak to the TSC, Tata Consultancy Services, I can't speak to other businesses which operate in our
mm.
sector. However, when we are working with businesses, so we work with businesses sizes ranging from as little as 4 users to I think the biggest one is now over 3,500,
Yeah.
3,700, something like that users. Like, for us, when we're working with businesses, every employee has a unique passphrase as part of their onboarding process to be able
Mm,
to, if they need to reset a password or they need to do something with sensitive information,
mm.
it's, think of like a what three words code, for example. Like,
Yeah.
they would have to quote that to be able to do something like a password reset.
Mm,
And even then, we then liaise with line managers within the business directly to ensure that they're aware that a user is trying to reset their password and also then confirm that
yeah.
they are okay for that password to be reset. Like, do TCS, I nearly said TSC then, do TCS have these sort of processes in place? Do they have something else in place? Was that just not followed? Like, these are all the types of questions that people should really be asking themselves. Like,
Mm,
if Joe Blogs from Business Round the Corner phones up their IT department and says, I need to reset my password, are
mm.
they just blindly resetting those passwords?
We'll never know. I mean, it's one of those. I so wish I was a fly on the wall in some of these rooms because I think actually the thing that fascinates me is like how this has happened.
Yeah.
because it's kind of like we like to hope, because we work in this sector, we like to hope that we would never be put in that position where we would,
Oh yeah.
we would, fake Tony would never ever get me to reset anything. Not that I have access to reset anything anyway, but do you know what I mean? It's kind of like we hope that we would be in that position. We're in that position where we've got enough knowledge to do that. But the thing we've got to also take into account is that the technology is getting way better.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of like, unless, like my favorite thing I was talking about the other day, unless we can start using retinal scans and stuff and somebody's stealing my eyeballs, then this is where we're going, isn't it? It's like, how do you, part of it is having conversations about it, like us talking about this now, although this is like us sort of like doing a what if, what's the worst case scenario that could have happened.
Or even just discussing like the
this,
potentials of like what these businesses should really be thinking about when they're putting these processes in place.
I think it's an entire podcast episode in itself. Just like, how the heck has this happened?
I am convinced that this time we will not go for an hour and 45 minutes.
I know. We're trying his best. We're trying his best. But it is a really, really interesting sort of like point of conversation, isn't it? Because what we thought would be possible 5-10 years ago in terms of like cybercrime is nothing like, we wouldn't have probably imagined half of this, I suppose. Maybe we would have, I don't know. But I don't think I would have ever in my wildest dreams imagined that Marks and Spencer's would be like essentially out of action in some areas of his business for 7 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is. That wouldn't have.
It's going on forever now.
Head.
Yeah. Like still not able to do online orders and different things like that.
No.
I suppose the bigger question for businesses and people listening to this episode today is, if you were to phone up your IT provider and say, I need to reset my password, are they just going to blindly reset that password? Or are they going to ask for further verification with yourself, further verification within the business? These are all things that you need to be able to ask yourselves. And whilst we can say this is what we do, that might not be the same as what everyone else does. So
no, and it's worth mentioning that there are different ways to verify, isn't it? So it's like, it's not necessarily,
it could be like a rotating code. That's something that we've also been looking at as well, putting processes in place, like similar to a multi-factor authentication code, for example.
But what I also think it needs to be is something that people will do. Because we talked about, didn't we, like privacy fatigue and stuff, and like the cookie thing. I think if it gets to the point where it becomes a pain in the backside and people don't want to do it,
people are just going to be resistant against it.
I think it needs to be something that's relatively quick and easy, that isn't too painful. So like if you're in the position where you can't get into your Outlook or whatever, you can't get into your Office 365, you're not exactly going to be calm and collected, are you? You're going to be slightly stressed, and it's something that you can do. It's like, oh my goodness me. But it kind of needs to be something that's quick and easy, that is obviously very secure, but not, tell me the first place that you went to school and I can't remember where I went to school and all this kind of stuff.
I once had one with an email address that said, what is your favorite pizza? My favorite pizza has changed that many times over the years. I wouldn't be able to remember what I set when I was like 10 years old.
I think I'll be controversial and say that mine's been Hawaiian for quite a while, and I'm fully expecting there to be like an onslaught in the comments at some point about Hawaiian pizza, but I am owning my love of Hawaiian pizza.
I do like Hawaiian pizza. We actually, going completely off topic, what is this show at this point? Going completely off topic, we had one of our suppliers buy us all pizza a few weeks back. Can't remember how long ago it was now. And they ordered the pizza so that we didn't have a choice of what it was. Like, if it was me, I'd just say meat and more meat, just shove it on a pizza, add a bit of spice, fine with that. But one of them was a Hawaiian, and like people were avoiding it. I was just like, no, I'm going to have some of that. I like a good Hawaiian pizza.
So I had massive FOMO about that pizza day. And now I know there was Hawaiian, it's like that FOMO's just ranked up, like massively.
I tell you what, when we do things like pizza days and our office fuddle, they are legendary. We've had like people reaching out to us in the past. Carol from Past Logistics, for example, saying, next time you do one, let me know. I'll get some food ready and I'm going to come round and join you.
Yeah. They look amazing. I mean, as a remote worker sat in Manchester, they look amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm just sat there with my cheese butty at dinner time thinking there's something wrong here, love.
Don't get it. We don't do it
Anyway.
every week, but like we will do it
No.
like once every month or 2 months or something like that. And it's just like we all look forward to it. And they've just grown out of control now because it's just like people bring in like these big platters and stuff. Like we had like a burrito station or something like that.
I saw that.
Yeah.
It's a bit like this podcast. It's going to get out of control, AJ. We need to get back on the block.
I should really try and get us back on track. I'm talking about burritos in the office now.
Such is the life of 24 IT.
Yeah, that's just sort of fun that we have here, though. It is great. It is great. I will move on to the second news story for today. Microsoft has taken down 2,300 domains used to distribute a password-stealing Lumma malware, which was found on more than 394,000 Windows PCs. Cybercriminals use this tool to be able to steal passwords, as well as credit card details, bank account details, and even crypto wallets and much more. The malware is now detectable by Windows Defender. However, it was most commonly found to be distributed as part of an install package when visiting dummy fake websites, downloading pirated apps, or even through malvertising. Malvertising, for those who don't know, is where cybercriminals will create fake adverts and things such as, like, I don't know, updating Chrome or updating Adobe or something like that, other common apps or other common things that people would search for on the internet, and you would be presented by a fake website as a paid search result, where you would download something that you would think is a legitimate file, but is actually being used to install this sort of malware. I even saw an article this past week that cybercriminals are now using things like TikTok to trick people into installing malware, even launching PowerShell scripts to be able to compromise and grant remote access to people's computers. I mean, for people who are not experienced, seeing this sort of thing on TikTok, it's a real security compromise, really. Like, just think about, I don't know, teenagers or the elderly or people who just aren't very computer literate. They see this video and then think, oh, I can download the Adobe Creative Cloud that's usually £60 a month or however much it is for free. Of course I'm going to do that because I don't want to spend that amount per month. So I'm going to write this code in PowerShell that someone's told me on TikTok. Next thing I know, computers infected with malware, people have got remote access, they're monitoring everything that you're doing, they're stealing data. I mean, okay, here's a question for you, Sarah. You've been using computers for a good number of years now. Have you ever downloaded a program from a site that was maybe not completely legitimate, let's say? You don't have to name names.
Am I allowed to say that now I work for a cyber company?
Well, this is at some point in your past.
in the post. I actually, to be honest, I don't think I knowingly have.
No?
And I sound like I that's terrible in some respects and not terrible in the other. I don't think I actually have. I'm like racking my brains now. I don't think I have. I genuinely don't think I have, because I think part of it is working in technology.
Yeah.
And knowing what can happen. I mean, it just doesn't bear thinking about. I was smiling at the whole TikTok thing because I have a TikTok account. Do I know what I'm doing with it? Do I heck? I'm like a 50-odd-year-old woman. I'm not meant to be on TikTok. It's not safe. So, like, when you're talking about the elderly doing things on TikTok, that's basically me, you know. Me sort of like sat there going, why somebody sent me this thing? People keep sending me cockatoo videos, which, to be honest, cockatoos are mental.
Yeah.
They're the maddest creatures ever, and I love them to bits. And I'm happy that they send them me, but I'm just not a fan of TikTok. Basically, I'm too old. But I think that is actually, as much as I'm like laughing at myself, I think that's a really valid point. If you're not actually familiar with the technology, you don't know the app or whatever.
Yeah. Do you know anyone who would potentially fall for one of these scams? Do you think?
I don't think I would now, because I am now so super critical of everything that comes into my inbox or messages or anything, because I'm like, is that really real?
Yeah.
because I obviously we've worked together a while. We know
Yeah.
these sorts of things happen and all the rest of it. So I think I am super critical, but I also think that these things are getting so good now.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, if I always sort of like hold the opinion, if something feels like it's too good to be true, it probably is.
I suppose this is more of a bigger question for the audience then.
Mm,
If you were to see a video on TikTok, or if you were to search for how to update Adobe Creative Cloud, or
yeah.
how to get cheap Adobe Creative Cloud, or something like that,
Mm,
and you were presented with a video or a website or something that told you, oh, you can get it really cheap or free by doing XYZ, would you do it? Would you
mm,
potentially compromise your security by doing something that is not right? Like, do you think that you
yeah.
would follow these instructions? I think that's the big question.
I
I
think it also depends on what it is as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Because it's like, for me, Creative Cloud, I'm like, no, Adobe Creative Cloud terrifies me. I'm quite happy with my Canva, thank you very much. But I think if it's something that you really hold in high regard, it's something that you
yeah,
want. If it's something that you use, maybe like if you're a smaller business and it's something that you use on a daily basis, it's just sort of like the temptation is there.
yeah,
And I think it depends on what it is for me personally, but I also would be really interested to see what everybody else would say, because it's kind of like, as some sort of like geriatric Luddite tech person
mm.
that I am, for me it's got to be something, it would have to be something pretty amazing, I
It
think, for me
goes
to do
beyond
that.
just software, though, doesn't it? Really, I mean,
Yeah.
the amount of people who will, I don't know, let's say, download a TV show or a movie or something like that.
I've never done that neither.
But
Never.
torrent
Mm,
software has evolved a lot over the years. I will
mm,
openly admit that when I was younger, I may have used some websites to be able to get some music that I wanted that I didn't want to pay for a full CD for. I would rather just get the song that I liked.
mm,
Now, nowadays, I have then migrated to buying tracks that I once may have gotten for free. So those companies now have access to the money that I
mm,
would have spent then. Um, I also use Apple Music for streaming. So
mm.
companies are getting their money from that. So I have made sure to repay these companies in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But when I was younger and I didn't have money, yes, I will have used torrenting software to be able to access a song.
You
But
see, I
that
would
is
have never, I
also
never did that.
it's also
But
before I
I
knew better as well.
Yeah, I guess there is a thing about that as well, because I think when you're younger, there is that kind of, why should I pay for this? And
Yeah,
you don't. I mean, music has always been my thing. So for me, I would rather not eat and buy vinyl back in
yeah,
the day. That was, I would not go out so that I could buy something. So I enjoyed the process of having a record and da da da. Da.
yeah,
But I think as you get older as well, I think you appreciate how um how the music industry works, how artists get paid. I
yeah,
mean, there's been a lot of hoo-ha, hasn't there, about things like streaming, like
yeah,
Spotify and Apple, about how much artists are paid for their work out
yeah,
the back of us streaming instead of buying. And I'm pretty late to streaming, I have to say. It's only been since solidly working from home, so maybe like the last 3 years, that I've actually started using Spotify, because I
yeah.
would just go and buy a CD or pay
I mean, you
extortionate rates
even
for vinyl.
told me as well you invested in a pair of AirPods like myself because
Yeah.
you found yourself streaming more as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So that's a relatively new invention for me, definitely. But I think as you get older, you kind of, it's not like, I'm not saying that younger people don't value money and all the rest of it, but I think your understanding of how the world works and what the implications of doing that,
yeah,
you kind of change your opinion about
yeah.
it in some
And
respects, I
it's about
think.
these wider implications as well. If you are using these sorts of illegitimate tools or downloading from illegitimate sources, how do
Mm,
you know that there are not malware behind these things that you're downloading?
mm,
Like, even just looking at something like a simple or session token hijack, which is embedded in a
mm.
PDF or something like that.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be something complex to be able to
no.
launch an attack on these people and businesses. I mean, thankfully, we provide tools to businesses that are able to
Mm,
monitor for these background activities, and we would like to
yeah.
hope that we talk to businesses enough and ensure
Yeah.
that they're not installing illegitimate software and hardware. I mean, we can see software that people have downloaded and license keys and stuff like that people have put onto their computers, and are, say, for example, our application device ring fencing is able to look if an application is trying to do something beyond what it's supposed to. But many people and many other businesses, in fact, don't have these solutions in place, and
No.
they could be downloading a version of Adobe Creative Cloud that's been unlocked and this, that, and the other that's also got a lot of other stuff behind it
Yeah.
that they're then not aware of, that is then being used to steal passwords and credit card
Yeah.
details and crypto wallets and different things like that. It's
Mm.
people need to understand the
Yeah,
risks
and
that
I
they're
think we
taking.
do sit in a different place, don't we? Because I'm just like, I was just thinking as you were saying that, way back in the day when I was at college, sort of like in the late 80s, stroke early 90s, it was drilled into us about like dodgy discs, because it was all
Yeah,
floppy disks and stuff like that still then. So, like don't, like if somebody comes up to you and you remember like Amigas and Ataris and oh, I've got
yeah.
this disc, and people were copying like games and stuff.
The
And the
original
number of
rubber
people.
ducky.
Exactly, we knew we had to get that in there somewhere. Back in the day, like back when we were students, it was this whole Amiga and
Yeah,
Atari sort of ST things, and people were swapping games and stuff. And the number of people who sort of like fell foul, I have to say, as an Atari ST user, I did not, because I took the moral high ground. But a lot of my Amiga loving friends had issues because they would get dodgy discs
yeah,
from people. And so I want to say I've grown up with this, because this was always sort of been a thread that somebody gives you something.
yeah,
So if you get a game for free, or, like dodgy sticks for TV or whatever, there is a reason why it's free, and it's normally because the cost implication comes
yeah,
from something malicious
yeah,
attached to it. And it's
yeah.
kind of like, so the way I think about it is very old school and very hardware, which is why I love the whole ducky thing. It's just like that just makes me smile, because that is so old school in some respects,
Yeah.
but yet still really, really relevant.
Relevant,
But
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, let's move on to our third news. In fact, it's a third and a fourth news story because they're going to go into each other because they kind of
Okay.
relate. So, have you, in fact, I'm going to say have you, Sarah, because I have already sent you these, so I know you have, but I'm also going to ask the audience of this. Have you seen any of the new AI generated videos from Google VO V3? VO as in VEO, by the way. VO V3. There's actually been quite a few floating around the internet over the weekend that, to the untrained eye, look incredibly believable. For
Mm.
those who are not familiar, VO is an AI video generation platform from Google, similar to the one from OpenAI. I forget the name of it now. But they're able to produce realistic videos. However, the new version is also able to reproduce voice and background side effects as well. One of
Mm.
the ones that I saw, and I sent this to Sarah yesterday because I wanted her to be able to check it out so we could talk about it, is a guy who previously he has shot $500,000 pharmaceutical commercials. He paid $500, or the equivalent to $500, to be able to generate a fake pharmaceutical advert for medication called Puppramin, which the AI subjects in the video claimed brought puppies to their homes to treat depression. I'm sorry, I can't get through it with a straight face.
It's just magic, this one.
Yeah,
If you've not seen it, we've got to put a link to that out
I
somewhere.
am going to make sure I include this in the comments.
Yeah.
In fact, I really wanted to be able to share the video inside the show, and I know that I can do it, but I haven't prepared to be able to
No,
do it.
no, you're
And
not
I
allowed to
don't.
do it, because we'll be hysterical for
And
like hours. It's just like,
I also don't know what the copyright concerns with something like that is, because it's been
no,
produced by Google and it's a guy who done it, like, recreate. Again, I'll look into it. Maybe this is something that we can do in the future. But
yeah.
it was able to produce weirdly quite accurate, like, different tones of voices. And there's even people in the video
Mm,
making jokes and then, like, having a bit of a chuckle, and people who sound depressed, even. Like,
yeah.
what the heck? Like,
I,
I,
if
Sarah,
Go on.
let me know your thoughts on this video. You've seen the video. If anyone wants to have a
Oh,
look for it, look for Google VO, as in VEO, and then Puppramin video because
No, it's
absolutely it's scary to see because it
there is
looks so realistic. For the untrained eye, it looks so realistic, should I say. What did
there's
you think
so
about it when you were
much.
looking at it?
So the first reaction was, "What the heck has he sent me now?" Because that's normally what happens if we're on a stage. It's like, what have I got now? And the more I watched it, the more I was sort of like gobsmacked I was, because I was just sat there going, "Oh my god, this is amazing." Now so this is a bit of a controversial way, I suppose, of thinking about it. So I sort of like, my partner is German, so I was sort of like looking at it, and I was thinking, like, if I was somebody who English wasn't my native language.
Mm,
So like when I watch German TV adverts and stuff, I sort of like held that in the same way as when I'm watching German
yeah,
commercials, because I was like, if I didn't know that this was not, English speaking Americans, I think it
yeah,
was, wasn't it? And if that wasn't English speaking people, if that wasn't my native language, I would not know that that wasn't a genuine thing.
yeah,
That's just the language, because I think the way that the language was presented, like you say, the sort of like the emotions that people
yeah.
were displaying, the way that people's voices changed,
If you
I would be
compare
like,
that to a
it's so real.
pharmaceutical ad in America,
Pretty
a
much
legitimate
identical.
is pretty much
Pretty
identical.
much identical.
Yeah. Yes, it's
And
for this fake Puppramin sort of pill to bring puppies to your house. But if you
what?
if it had been about any other thing that wasn't so obviously fake,
Yeah. I'm
could you
just
fall
thinking
for
about
it?
the adverts that I see regularly. So, like the way that German telly does medical related type
Yeah.
adverts is slightly different, because they always put a disclaimer on the end of
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And I can't say the words that they say in German because it goes far too quick, and it's all about talking to your doctor and
yeah,
da 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 da, reading all the stuff that's in the packet and everything. So the way that they present adverts is slightly different, and I think it aligns a bit more to like the sort of American US
yeah,
market. There seems to be like a different vibe to them, and I think the way that we do sort of medical stuff is slightly different. But I think if I relate it back to like the German type adverts, or the adverts that I've seen when I've been in America, I'm just like, that is so real.
yeah,
If you would have made that something sensible, so if you would have, as she says, like, not dogs turning up at your house because you've
yeah,
done this thing, but if you made that a legitimate thing, so like, I'm trying to think of something now that is, a legitimate advert, cough medicine,
yeah.
for example, or anti-allergy medicine or whatever. If
Get
they
rid of
had
your asthma
done
with this
that,
simple pill.
yeah, if they had done that about something that was an actual factual medical product, and I had sat there at like 5 o'clock at night when you sent it me,
Yeah,
I would have not known that that was different. A part of me was just sort of like slightly terrified and gobsmacked and all the emotion at once, because it's just sort of like, it was so real, and I was really scrutinizing it, trying to look for like seven fingers and that kind of
yeah.
stuff, like the sort of like bits that you see on AI that that makes it AI. And I really struggled to see anything that I thought in that format, because I was looking at it on my phone. I was like, in that format, I really couldn't see anything. It might be different if you were looking at it on a telly,
That
but
brings up a
so
different
good.
question entirely, though. Like, if you're an average person scrolling through social media, TikTok, for example, we'll go back to the malvertising thing that we spoke about in the previous
You've got
topic.
no idea.
You put a
No idea. And if
website link at the end of that
mm,
about something realistic, like solve your asthma with this simple pill,
mm,
or you will no longer have diabetes with this one simple pill,
yeah,
people
absolutely.
could potentially believe something like that because they don't know any better and they don't know that that is AI generated.
And if
It's
you think about on a telephone as well, so it's smaller
yeah,
format, so you're less likely to notice the sort
imperfections
of
and
like,
things.
yeah, the bits that don't make it real. It's
Yeah,
like even the dogs. I
yeah,
mean, I love a dog. Even the dogs were like pretty blooming convincing. I was like, it was such a weird experience watching it, because I knew that it wasn't real, but my brain is telling me that this is real. And I think this is the thing. I think this is an interesting part of like these sort of, particularly the fake, like commercials like this, is that our brain will fill in the gaps. So the
yeah,
bits that we don't, sort of like, one bit of us knows that they're not real, our brain will actually make it real, and it will sort of like fill in the bits of information that
Yeah.
are missing. So the bits that we see that maybe don't quite ring true, our brain will be like, no, no, you're not seeing the wrong thing, you're seeing this. And if, like, say, on a smaller format like a phone, you've got less sort of scope for seeing those visual abnormalities.
Yeah, definitely.
Makes it so real. It's amazing and terrifying at the same time, basically. And
It,
where can I get some of this stuff from because I want a dog, basically? Can I have some? I'm signing up tomorrow, I'm
yeah,
telling you.
go for it.
Mm.
It is scary, and it does mean
Mm.
that we're now going to have to be more
Mm.
scrutinous. Is that the word I'm looking for? Of things
We're
that we
gonna have to do
see
something.
on like YouTube and TikTok and other
Mm.
social media,
Yeah.
because it could easily be just another AI deepfake nowadays. And
Mm.
how long before you scroll through TikTok or YouTube and see a version of, I don't know, your favorite content creator, or even just me, for example? Can you imagine
Deepfake
scrolling through and
AJ.
seeing my voice and face on another video somewhere? Like, if I'm talking about,
It's entirely possible. I
yeah,
mean, we've already deep faked Tony, haven't we? So we
yeah,
might as well just do you next and crack on. But it is a really interesting point that it's sort of like there was a spate, wasn't there, of like there was a lot of videos, the deep fake Obama videos that I
yeah,
saw,
or
and
the Will Smith with
I
the
watched
spaghetti or
those.
whatever it was.
Yeah, I watched those and I was like, I mean, obviously having never met the man,
Yeah,
I really don't know whether that's him or not. And I think that going back to that conversation of us like deep faking Tony's voice and
yeah,
everything, there are things about the people that we know that will make it, I suppose if you know them really well, would make it
harder.
obvious.
Yeah,
So like if it was we talked about deep faking Mike, didn't we,
mm.
yesterday as well? We've done basically cloned
Yeah. We've
the
cloned
entire
everyone in the
24
TwentyFour
IT
IT office at this
pretty
point. Yeah,
much. But like the way that Mike sort of like talks about things, the way that Mike intonates
like
words,
presents himself and
yeah, and his mannerisms and
yeah,
everything. I think because I've known Mike for a number of years, I would like to hope that I would recognise that that wasn't Mike.
yeah,
But then when you look, like, say, you look at that clip that you sent me for the Puppramin, it's like I'm not entirely sure that whether I would or I
yeah.
wouldn't because it is so
You,
good,
you,
so good.
whilst you may be able to understand the idiolect and the intonation
Mm,
of someone that you know, you
mm,
can't say the same for an advert where you are removed from it, almost impartial to
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But
And
it
when we were
does.
talking,
Go on.
so when we were talking about it yesterday, because we obviously were having a bit of a chatter about
Yeah,
this, as we do, I was saying about like when Mike talks to me and he's in the car.
yeah,
So if you're in that situation where that has been replicated, Mike, might be in the car or on the train or
yeah.
whatever, when he's traveling and he will phone me, he will break up.
Mm,
If they can replicate that as well,
to make it
which they
believable.
could,
Yeah,
then that makes it even more difficult because you're in a situation, particularly as somebody who's, partially deaf, even with, like a hearing aid and whatever, that situation then makes it even more difficult to know that that's genuinely Mike
yeah,
or genuinely Tony or whoever else we've deep faked
yeah.
recently.
But
No, no.
speaking of, sorry, speaking of AI voices on a train, though, it does bring us into the next part of this news story, which actually means we were discussing this earlier, weren't we, Sarah?
Mm.
Um, Yesterday, I saw a news story about a person by the name of Gayam Potter. I think that's how you say her name. Now, you might not know the name, may not even know the face, but you may actually recognize her voice, as she is a voice behind adverts from Apple, B&Q, Estee Lauder, and many, many others. It has now come to light that an AI-generated version of her voice is now being used in Scotland on the train network ScotRail without her being made aware of it. She said to Sky News, "I was devastated, furious, and feel completely violated," and went on to say that my voice is my job and I should be allowed to know who I am working with and what I am working on. She believes that the incident can be traced back to a job she completed during the COVID pandemic with Swedish company Reed Speaker, where she recorded scripts for the visually impaired. And she also alleges that she was unaware that the contract allowed her voice to be sold as part of AI years later. ReadSpeaker insisted that there was a very clear contract that allows it to use synthesized voices for businesses and organizations. Of course, this then brings forward the question of who has the rights to use your voice or image or likeness, and should you receive some ongoing loyalties if it is used for these types of purposes. Mrs. Potter told Sky News, I do not consent to my voice data being used. To find out that my personal human data is being used on the trains is appalling. I feel like my data is being burgled and I have no control over it. Phil Campbell, who is the Customer Operations Director for ScotRail, said, we are always looking at ways to improve the customer journey experience, and we know how important both on-train and at-station announcements are. The use of an automated voice allows us to have more control over the announcements being made and ensures consistency for our customers, and gives us the flexibility to make changes at short notice. ScotRail also stated that they have no plans to remove the AI announcer voice at this time. However, Union Equity, which represents workers in creative industries like this, is helping her fight this case. However, ReadSpeaker have said that they have comprehensively addressed Mrs. Potter's concerns with legal representatives. Is this just a case where someone's voice is being used after signing contract that gives them permission to use it whenever they want? Like, should that even be allowed? Like, should you only be signing a contract for your voice to be used for the purposes of that particular project? And if you are signing a contract for it to be used in perpetuity, should that contract be specifically for that use case? I mean, I am going to bring it back before we kind of discuss this in a little bit further. James Earl Jones. Let's use James Earl Jones as an example. James Earl Jones gave his permission to use his voice specifically for the purposes of Darth Vader in future Star Wars projects. And it was then recently used to create an AI voice of Darth Vader in Fortnite. And whilst Epic Games did say that they had protection in place to ensure that it couldn't be used maliciously, some users were then able to make the AI Darth Vader, which was James Earl Jones' voice, swear. And it's challenging this. I mean, thankfully they were able to push a hotfix to be able to fix this. However, SAG-AFTRA now filing unfair labour practices for the use of his voice and alleging that they've replaced actors' work by using artificial intelligence to generate Darth Vader's voice in Fortnite without anyone else's notice. It's a challenging one because on one side of things, and I know, Sarah, we've spoken about this, Darth Vader is James Earl Jones and James Earl Jones is Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And if he
But
has
never,
signed
ever.
away rights to use his voice for Darth Vader and it is used responsibly, and I say responsibly because if they are finding a way to make the AI swear, that is not responsibly, that's him specifically giving his permission to use it for that particular purpose. In the case of Mrs. Potter, for example, she is alleging, I will say alleging because we don't know the full ins and outs of the situation, that she has signed a contract for a particular job. She has recorded her voice for that job, but that contract stated that they can use her voice in perpetuity for other projects at any time without needing her permission. I have so many thoughts on this.
Yeah.
I do not feel that that is fair and that they have the right to be able to do that. I feel that that contract should only be for the project that she was working on. And for all I know, someone's recording this live stream or going through previous videos that I've recorded right now, taking my voice and could be using that for their own purposes. Like, I do not feel that it's right for them to use it in this ScotRail example.
Yeah.
I understand ScotRail wanting to use an AI voice, like I say, the flexibility, making changes at short notice, not needing to have access to the voiceover specialist in this case. But okay, use another voice that has given the permission to be able to use it for this purpose.
I think this is really difficult. I'm just thinking about what immoral purposes people could be using your voice for, AJ. I mean, there's like the mind boggles. I just think it's a really tricky one because neither of us two are legal experts.
No.
So I think for me personally, it boils down to, so when we were discussing this before, we were talking, so like James Earl Jones, like nobody on this planet will ever, ever, ever have a voice like James Earl
No.
Jones at all. He will always be the voice of Vader, and that's it. That is no discussion. But if he agreed to his voice being used for Star Wars, and it's like we were saying, it depends what he agreed to at the time. And like I say, neither of us are legal experts, so it's like I could be talking utter hogwash. But if he agreed to use it for Star Wars, then it's kind of like, is that black and white enough? Is it a bit too grey? Is it that we actually need to be more specific now on contracts? Because if you think about contracts a couple of years ago for voiceover artists,
Yeah.
nobody would have thought that people would be using their voice elsewhere.
No.
In an AI capacity. I mean, yes, there is the potential that it could have been used for other projects,
Yeah.
but from an AI perspective, we've not thought about this. And this sort of goes back to our conversation last time, doesn't it, on the first episode? It's like there are so many avenues that we can go now down that maybe we didn't think about. So when maybe, when James Earl Jones was saying, yes, you can use my voice for Star Wars, AI probably was about then when he signed that. We don't know when this contract was created, but maybe he was just sort of thinking, well, actually, like the example I gave when we were chatting before, The Crow is one of my favourite films, which nobody is surprised by. Probably, who knows me, but Brandon Lee, they use CGI in the film, so like it's a similar sort of thing, isn't it? His likeness was regenerated basically to allow them to finish that film. It's happened in other films, we
Fast and
could talk about
Furious, for
many.
example, and
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like that.
things like that. So,
but when it comes to someone's voice, I mean, let's go back to James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones is instantly recognizable as many characters. Darth Vader. Callum sent me a message over on LinkedIn saying James Earl Jones is also Mufasa as well. Like, again, another iconic part that he played.
Yeah,
and
I think about him in the Conan film as well. So like that, I'm showing my age now. He was like impressive in that, but he is so unique. He is so unique that his voice. So for him, I suppose it's a slightly different conversation, is it? Because his voice is instantly recognizable. Whereas the lady
it's only
who's
being used for existing projects like Star Wars. It's not being used for new projects.
Yeah.
It's being used to represent a character.
Yeah. But that's quite a
return,
finite container, isn't it? It's like I'm saying that for this purpose of Star Wars and the associate. I mean, like if you think about this, we could now overrun massively on the Star Wars universe, but if you think about the Star Wars universe and like what comes out of that, that's quite a huge scope, really. But it's also quite a finite container because it's Star Wars, and we all know, it's a specific container. But the lady with her
Mrs. Potter
voice and the stuff that she did in COVID, that kind of like feels like, when people buy mailing lists and stuff like that. Is it kind of a similar sort of thing to that? Is it? Again, it's one of those, we're not legal experts, so we don't know what she's actually signed. We don't know what the wording was for that. And it might have been that there may have been some wording in there that was suitably ambiguous, because there isn't a lot of these things, for her to agree to sign it and for her legal representation to agree that it's okay. But actually it was suitably woolly so that the company could do
then use it whatever
done.
they want for. And this then now begs the question, what else could they be using her voice for? Like, that she's unaware of.
Yeah.
And if she's then not receiving any sort of royalties or any sort of payments for this, I mean, obviously when she was doing the project during COVID, she was paid for that project. From what I understand from the article that I read, she's not being paid for any of this other work that they're using her voice for. And I personally, I don't think that that's right. I don't think that it's fair.
No, I totally agree. But I think it's also similar to like the dodgy floppy disks, isn't it, and all that. There's
still fiddling with the ducky.
The ducky. We've always found ways of circumventing the law in some way, shape, or form when it comes to stuff like this. And it's like you was just saying before, if somebody was recording this now, we're not voice actors,
No.
although I think we probably should be after
Although
all
I
this
do
chatting.
record like news bits and advert bits
Yeah,
every now
yeah.
and again
So
in my spare
you're
time, but
nearer to that than I am. I just sit and talk rubbish about whatever you ask me to talk about, kind of thing. So I'm not a
ask you to
professional
fill
in
in
the voice.
literally with hours' notice because
Yeah,
Tony's out doing a walk for charity.
yeah. He's doing the better thing though,
Yeah,
honestly. But it's like I don't do it as a paid role. So if I guess there's the difference, isn't it? If somebody stole my voice, why?
yeah,
But anyway, if somebody steals my voice and then it's used in something else, I'm not somebody who's got a high enough profile probably for somebody to notice it.
yeah,
Whereas because she's a voice actor anyway, and she is known because of her adverts, and when I was thinking, who the heck is this woman? I don't know who she is, and then I heard her voice. I
yeah,
listened to the voice record. I'm like, I know that voice.
yeah.
So because you know that person,
It
you're
becomes
kind of
recognizable.
yeah, and then it's like a brand, it's like a trademark or whatever,
Yeah,
isn't it? It's something that's unique and is being used maliciously, I suppose, is the what we're saying.
yeah, basically.
It's a tricky one. I think it's probably more about the legal sort of intricacies of contracts now
Mm.
that maybe needs to be tightened up and more specific.
And again, I think it then needs to go back to there should be regulations in place
Mm,
within these industries as to what can be used, and if
mm,
you are signing, I don't know, a contract on a particular job, that yes, it could
mm,
be maybe you can AI generate someone's voice if you need some amendments on that particular job,
yeah,
but that it can't then be used in other projects
yeah.
without the express consent of the person who has done the recording.
Mm,
I think it's a much wider conversation, but just
yeah.
because in this case it's someone who has signed a contract and professionally recorded for this company, that
Mm,
doesn't then mean that people aren't using other people's voices in malicious ways. I mean, for example, I've seen multiple videos of people in the tech YouTube space who have had
mm,
their likeness and their voices
yeah.
copied to try and do some form of cyber scams and things like that.
Mm,
Um, I heard on a podcast this past weekend even that one of the hosts of the podcast, had their voice and their likeness recreated to try and do a MacBook giveaway, I think it was. And
wow.
yeah, when the person said, "I don't believe you're the right person," they sent an AI generated video of this person saying, "No, look, it's me. I'm giving away MacBooks. All you need to do is send the postage cost."
Yeah,
Like, it looks believable at first glance for someone who
yeah.
maybe isn't savvy enough or maybe doesn't
Yeah,
know
or
what to
maybe
look
doesn't
for.
even follow that person, the
Yeah,
originator of the voice, in the tech space, for example. So if you come
exactly.
across this, it's like we said about, like Mike and Tony, we know them.
Yeah,
So we like to hope that we understand the way that they speak. There are markers within the way that they behave that we
yeah,
would recognize if they were not quite right,
exactly.
I suppose. She says, fingers crossed and hopefully.
But it's a dangerous thing that's going to keep developing, and
Mm.
it's about making people aware of these
And
things
I
as
think
well
this is
now.
the thing. I think actually having the conversation about it
Yeah,
is something that's really, really important, because if we don't talk about it and it's kind of kept hush hush, for want of a
yeah,
better word, it's not in the public domain, then how do people know this is happening? How do people know what they need to look out for?
exactly.
Because if the fakes are so good, like the Puppramin advert, like the ones that I saw of
Yeah,
Barack Obama, I mean, some of
yeah.
those were absolutely amazing.
I mean, I haven't
And
even talked about some of the other ones I saw this past weekend. There was that one where they've created a video of someone playing Fortnite on a computer, and there's
yeah,
a video of them in the corner reacting to whatever they're doing, and then there is the video game on the screen. All of it completely AI generated.
yeah.
Like,
Well, you shared that with me, didn't you? You
yeah,
shared that with me, and I'm like, what am I looking at here? Because I'm like, I had no
yeah. I'm
idea.
not a gamer, sort of thing. It's like
Well, no, it used to be back in the day, but we didn't have fancy technology like that, love. We're talking like Doom when it first came out and Hexen and stuff.
yeah,
But so definitely showing me age now. But that kind of like actually looking at that again, if you'd have not said to me, that's an AI generated thing. I don't, because of how I was consuming that content, I don't think I would have noticed.
No.
And it's not that I'm not sort of like intelligent or anything. It's just literally that it's so good that you were saying that there were wires under the monitor and everything. You know,
Yeah,
it was like somebody like me back in the day playing, you know, like Half-Life when that came out in the dark in
yeah,
my bedroom, like gaming away. It's like it was that scene, and
yeah,
it kind of like took me back to like the 90s kind of thing with that. And it was just sort of like that was such a good fake that if you just looked at it and glanced
yeah.
at it,
At that point, you're in a situation where you don't know any better, and it
mm,
is believable.
yeah. And I think
Mm,
this is the problem we've got now, isn't it? Because it's like, what is actually, we're getting a bit matrixy now, aren't we?
we
We're
are.
like,
We are. And I've
yeah,
just realised that we're 55 minutes into today's show, and we've still not got to today's main topic. So I best move on to that
come on,
before we get too into it. So,
yeah.
this week's topic is all about supply chain attacks. Now, supply chain attacks, for people who may not know, are very important at the moment, especially when we have a look at recent events like the M&S co-op cyber attacks, and also the one that I spoke about last week, the Peter Green chilled one, who supplied to people
Mm,
like Tesco and Sainsbury's and so on like that. But what are supply chain attacks? Now, when you listen to the word supply chain attack, it sounds like it's something to do with deliveries. It's not. Well, only that your deliveries could be something that are maybe impacted as part of a supply chain attack,
mhm,
but it's not directly related to deliveries and logistics and things like that. So anyway, I'll move on from that. Supply chain attacks are actually a reference to any part of your business supply chain, as in
mm,
suppliers for your business. That could be a supplier of a product or a service or a vendor that you deal with regularly. Anyone who supplies something to your business. But also similarly, your business is more than likely a part of a wider supply chain,
mm,
supplying services or products or something to another business. For example, say you're a commercial windows company or something like that. You supply windows to people. Maybe your glass supplier is hit by a cyber attack where cyber criminals gain access to their emails. Cyber criminals then use these legitimate emails to then launch an attack on that business's customers, sending out
mm,
emails with malicious PDFs or asking businesses to download a PDF to gain access to their systems, like um, the session token hijack that I spoke about previously,
mm,
or launch ransomware attacks and things like that. It's not always a question of if your business has the tools in place to protect yourselves from cyber threats. Sometimes it's about understanding if your suppliers have access to those tools to be able to protect themselves and protect you. That's why things like Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus and ISO 27001 and things like that exist, to showcase that businesses are following these best practices and minimum recommended requirements for cybersecurity and data
mm,
protection. Despite this, apparently only about 10% of businesses in the UK actually assess the risks of their immediate suppliers. And that actually drops even further when you look at the wider supply chain, which is only about 7% of businesses in the UK actually assess their wider supply chain, which is really, really low.
mm,
Ian McCormack, who is the NCSC, or the National Cybersecurity Centre Deputy Director for Government Cyber Resilience, said supply chain attacks are a major threat facing organizations, and incidents can have a profound and long lasting impact on businesses and customers. With incidents on the rise, it's vital organizations work with their suppliers to identify supply chain risks and ensure appropriate security measures are in place. Thankfully, I've been speaking with many businesses recently who, in the wake of attacks on the ones such as M&S and Co-op and others, are now looking at their wider supply chain and are
mm,
now speaking with us about how they assess their wider supply chain. But there are still many businesses who don't know what to look for, and we're supporting them or talking with them to support them on this journey.
mm,
Thankfully, this is why standards such as Cyber Essentials Plus, and ISO 27001, which we've spoken about, are there, and this is what they're made for. They're made for businesses to certify that they're following the best practices when it comes to cyber defense and data protection, and that they can then display this to current or prospective customers. I mean, Sarah, do you think that whilst Cyber Essentials is something that businesses can get if they want to at the moment, and that when we're providing cybersecurity services to businesses, we ensure that they are in line with that minimum Cyber Essentials standard, do you think that Cyber Essentials itself, even if it's just its basic form, should now be more of a requirement for businesses?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was when you asked me to step in and told me that we were going to be talking about this. I had a real think about this because I'm trying to think back in when I first started my sort of like working life,
Yeah.
working with ERP systems and stuff. It was I was going to say it was initially I was going to say it was in the early days of EDI. I then discovered that EDI was actually invented in the 60s by the US military or something.
Yeah.
So EDI has been around for donkey's years. But back in the day, sort of like in the mid 90s, yes, we'd got the internet, yes, we'd got technology and all the rest of it, but it wasn't as sort of like enmeshed as it is now.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think about when I worked for the logistics company, what position would we have been in if we'd have had a supply chain attack? And it would
Yeah.
have most likely have come from a blooming floppy disk, so the ducky again, or an EDI or malicious EDI order potentially, you know, something problems
Just
with
for
that.
those who aren't aware, EDI, if you can just explain it very briefly.
It's kind of I can't remember what it stands for now off the top of my head, but it's basically you transmit your orders to a supplier electronically.
Yeah.
There used to be modems cranking up back in the day. Is it electronic data interchange? Is that
Something
what
like
it
that,
stands
yeah.
for?
I would have to have a look
I've put
myself.
a post on LinkedIn today about jargon and like 3-letter acronyms, and we've got
And
millions of them.
immediately you started to use them.
And then I'm starting to use them, and some of them I can't even remember what they are anymore. But back in the day, you wouldn't have had. So, like now, if you think about if you've got a supplier, you might log on to a supplier portal. So they may give you a web address that you need to sign on. Back in the day, something beeped in the corner of the room, and your orders came down via the telephone or whatever magical mystery thing that they were
Magical
doing
mystery
back
box in the
then.
corner of the room.
Yeah, something happened and orders magically appeared. But if you think about that, I mean, I am like being blasé about it, but if you think about that, we didn't have that much to think about.
No.
And I think now, and I was sort of thinking about the people who are running businesses now are people sort of my age.
Yeah.
And even though I've worked in tech all my life, if we were brought up and cut our teeth in business at a time where the risk was significantly less,
Yeah.
do we actually think about it in the same way as a younger generation of managers maybe who have seen all this happening? So for me personally, I think it's like it's so important from not only for the other people in your supply chain to know that you're safe, but for also you to know what potential harm you could cause, but also what potential harm could be coming in.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a two-way street, and I think at the very least people should have like cyber essentials. I mean, to be fair, I think as the technology evolves, I think it's something that, we maybe need to look at in more detail. Is that actually enough anymore?
Well, there are.
Do you know what I mean? It's kind of.
Yeah. There are particular industries where Cyber Essentials or even Cyber Essentials Plus and ISO 27001 are requirements for certain contracts. I mean, say, for example, if you're working on a government contract, for example, many of them will require that you're at least Cyber Essentials Plus certified, for example, or follow ISO 27001 data protection and different things like that, that you're showcasing that your business is taking responsible steps to be cyber secure, protect its user and customer data and different things like that. But I think the bigger question is that should businesses, I don't know, if you class yourselves as a small business or a medium business, like, should you at least be now required to meet a minimum standard for cyber essentials to be able to trade?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if as a small business owner, so I have like a side hustle, I have to register with the ICO to say that I am complying with GDPR, which reminds me, I think I've done it this year. I have got. They probably would have shouted.
Shh,
It
don't
like
tell
it seems
anyone.
to come around really, really quick. But it's like it's one of those. So I have to do that because I'm potentially holding clients'
Yeah,
data. Yeah. So that goes without saying because most businesses, in some way, shape, or form, will hold clients'
yeah,
data. And I think we're kind of, as a small business community, I'm talking like micro businesses, sole traders, people are used to that now.
yeah,
But then I also think we're also posing a risk as well in the sort of cyber sense
yeah,
because we use lots of different tools. So, if you think about me sat at home working on my Mac, I obviously like to think that it's safe and secure and I keep it protected and what have you. But we exchange information with so many lots of different people. We
mhm,
might have like um inquiries coming in via email. There is no easy way to say that that is secure and that we're paying attention to that. And I think that when I go out and speak to businesses, there are a lot who are kind of quite blasé about it because they're the smaller end of the market. They think it won't happen to them.
yeah.
And I think the fact that you have to go through this process of getting this certification makes you more aware. And I think it's awareness. I always go back to that. If we don't talk about it, if people don't know about it, how are they supposed to do the
Yeah.
thing? So I think that I personally would love to see it come in for every business, to be honest.
It goes back to that topic of many businesses feel that they're too small to be
Mm,
targeted in cyber attacks. I'm just trying to find the exact statistic that we've used previously, and it
mm,
changes year to year.
yeah.
Um, but let's have a look. I want to say it's 67%.
I seem to remember it's sort of 60 odd percent
I think
of businesses.
67% of cyber attacks or something like that. Again,
Yeah.
I would have to, don't quote me on that particular number. I would have to
Yeah.
say it's around that, but 67% of cyber attacks happen to small to medium sized businesses,
Mm,
which is a massive number when you consider the amount of
yeah.
businesses in the UK that are classed as small to medium sized businesses.
Mm. It's the biggest part of the business community in the
Yeah,
UK is SMEs.
it is.
And if you think about that covers quite a lot of range of types of businesses,
Exactly.
and you think about how we live our lives and how interconnected we are, then I just think it kind of, yes, it can feel like it's a pain in the backside to do all these things, and you have to remember that they need to be done and all this, that, and the other. But what's worse? What actually is worse? I mean, we all know, don't we, of businesses that have been part of an attack in some way, shape, or form. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, we've spent ages talking about Marks and Spencers, but if you are a smaller business, maybe you've only got 5, 10 people, that doesn't make you immune. It really doesn't. And it's just sort of like, I think everything that we can do to raise awareness of these subjects and to encourage people to, take it seriously, it's got to be a good thing.
Oh, of course, of course. I'm just seeing if I can find the stat now, just so I can make sure that I'm quoting the right number.
So I'm pretty sure it's not far off. It was quite a high number. And I think when I first saw it a couple of years ago, I was quite shocked
Yeah.
because I thought, that there is this myth that perpetuates that the smaller end of the business market are not targeted. But I know of people who've had like Facebook pages hacked, stuff like that. I mean, that is
Oh,
still
that's incredibly
still a
common.
thing.
Incredibly common.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. Small to medium sized businesses, 67%. Look at
Yeah.
that for my memory. Wow, bleeding hell. My wife has just walked into our office, well, my office, because she works in the office just across there. She will attest to the fact that my memory is completely useless at the best of
Yeah.
times, apart from
Yeah.
the most random facts in the world.
Oh
Ask me
yeah,
a
I can
question
still
on Disney
remember
and I
my
can
phone number.
reproduce it, but
Yeah.
ask me random cybersecurity stats, and apparently I can find them off the top of my head. Ask me what we're doing this weekend.
No idea.
Cannot remember.
No, I can remember my phone number from when I lived in Sheffield when I was a child, basically. Before it was O1142 or whatever it was,
Yeah.
or yeah, I can remember it before then. I can't remember what my home phone number is now. Not a clue.
No, it's one of those things. It becomes a convenience at that point because it's just in your phone
Yeah,
book. I don't even
yeah.
have a home phone number actually nowadays. Just
Oh my
mobile.
goodness me.
No.
No, 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 we're going to go on a tangent. No.
Yes, we do keep going off on tangents. We
Behave.
do keep going off on tangents. But yes,
Behave.
so coming back to the supply chain attacks. No, I think that now, yes, all businesses should be required to at least follow the minimum cyber essential standards.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if businesses want to ensure that they're protected from these evolving threats, what was it? 8.58 million cyber attacks on UK businesses this last year? Ridiculous numbers, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It should be that when businesses are doing their cybersecurity audits, that they're also ensuring that that process assesses their suppliers. They should be saying, okay, Joe Blogg's supplier, I don't know, I'll go back to the window company example. You supply us glass. Can I please get a copy of your Cyber Essentials certification and your expiry date? That should just be a requirement of doing business nowadays. And just saying, look, if we're doing business with you, we want to make sure that your data and your security is, so your data security and your cyber security is being handled effectively. We were speaking with a business who came in this morning, who currently moving into an office around the corner from here in the next few months. And they do contracts with big multinational organizations and do have government contracts. And they were saying, we need to make sure that we get our Cyber Essentials renewed. So we were talking with them about it. So
yeah, government contract type stuff tends to be really good.
Yeah.
Tends to be really good. I know people who've worked on stuff for the MOD. So they tend to be like security central. And it's not like we're expecting everybody to be at like MOD levels of security clearance and stuff. But I think it's just about, I mean, we've said many times, and I think it's come up on it sort of like pretty much every podcast that we've done, that the people are the weakest link in the chain.
Yeah.
And even having cyber essentials doesn't stop things from happening, but it just brings it to people's...
It's a significant step forward to make sure that your business has the essential minimum requirements.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're talking about, essential minimum requirements. I'm not talking about me having to do like a 12-month cybersecurity course just to be able to trade with people, but I think it's important that we realise that, and this is not like... what was it they used to say at the end of Crime Watch? Was it like "don't have nightmares" or something? We're not talking about like this. No, you're not old enough, love. We're not talking about this.
I am old enough. It's just I never used to watch it.
I used to watch it when I was babysitting, which was horrendous sort of thing to do. But we're not talking about it becoming sort of like a nightmare for people to do this. You know, we're not talking about, you know, it being another thing that you've got to think about, because then people will just, you know, not do it properly and stuff. But I think it's a reasonable sort of fact that at some point, I would pretty much say that everybody who owns a business will know of at least somebody who's had some sort of cyber incident, for want of a better word. You know, and we're not talking big ones like Marks and Spencer's. We're actually talking about people that they know that will have had something. So the fact that you're saying publicly, I am taking this seriously, you know, I think is a good thing.
Well, we will come back to this topic of cybersecurity audits and what businesses should be doing and how we can support businesses in a future episode. We have got an exciting announcement coming up in a few weeks' time, where we'll be talking a little bit about this in a bit more detail, let's say. So I'm going to hold off that information for now because it's a very exciting topic. To close out the show, though, today, Sarah, would you like to tell us a little bit more about the AI event that we're doing on June 26th at Castle Park and how people can sign up for it if they want to come along?
I would, because I am excited about this event. I am living and breathing this event at the moment. So we are doing this event, and the real reason that we're doing it is that we want people to have conversations. So this is this whole thing about talking about stuff. And I know from my own personal experience that AI is a tricky subject for businesses to talk about. the whole 3-letter acronym conversation, people talk about AI in a way that doesn't always resonate with the smaller end of the business market. So,
people
SME.
don't know what it is or how it can help them.
Yeah, or they have so much information thrown at them that it's like information overload.
Yeah.
And this is not about us being patronizing or anything. This is actually about having a conversation with businesses in the South Yorkshire region or further afield if you are so inclined. Spending half a day, essentially a morning with us
9
to
till
kind
12,
of,
I think it is, off the top of my head.
9 till 12. So it's not all day,
No, we're
half
putting
a
on
day.
breakfast and coffee as well.
Yeah, I mean, if food and conversation. And I think that's the thing that I really want to say about it is about having a conversation, because we've got a lot of experience sort of around 24 IT in the sort of like logistics, manufacturing, professional officers type environment. I just think about me and Mike. Me and Mike were talking about it the other day, and we ran out of fingers and toes of how much experience we've got, basically, which is quite bad. But we understand that sort of business. We've both worked in those sorts of businesses. Mike has owned businesses that deal with those sorts of businesses. It's like this is our bread and butter. And we wanted to have a conversation about how people can actually use AI within their business. And this is not like we think you should do it this way. It's like, how do you want to use it? Are you fit to use AI in your business? Because there's a whole conversation that doesn't happen about whether your data is fit for purpose, for want of a better word. And for those of us that have worked in tech for a long time, we all know the garbage in, garbage out thing. So it's like, there's this conversation that needs to be had about whether it's the right thing for you to do. So this is partly what this event is about. I get so passionate about it. I could literally go on about it for hours, because I think it's
We've not got
important.
hours. I said I'd keep it under an hour and 45 minutes today.
Because I'll just do my own video one day and just talk about it. But I think it's important that we have these conversations that they're open and honest conversations about what people are worried about, for example. Because a lot of the time people are making assumptions about what AI means in a business. And they're looking at what their business is and going, this doesn't match what I want to do. So therefore I can't have it. I can't use it. Well, actually, no, you can.
Or maybe even a business, and I'll use this example. I can't remember whether I spoke about it last week, actually, but I know that we spoke about it when we did when we sponsored the sponsors lunch at Castle Park for the end of Doncaster Night season, sponsoring the sponsors lunch. Speaking of sponsorships, we're also sponsoring the what's the name of it now? Why can I not think of it?
The cricket.
We're sponsoring
pictures of cricket grounds.
The cricket grounds. It's Amy, can you tell me what it is? Because I can't remember.
I can't remember what they were. Actually, it's cricket.
Tickhill Cricket Club. Tickhill Cricket Club.
I knew it when he said it.
Now. I knew it began with a T, and I was like, where?
Tickhill.
We're sponsoring Tickhill Cricket Club. So not only are we sponsors of Doncaster Nights throughout the summer, we're also sponsoring Tickhill Cricket Club. But going back to the topic that I was talking about previously, when it comes to using AI in business, you may have something that takes a long time to be able to do. So we spoke with a business recently who was wanting to assess current and past customers, the business that they've done with them over the years, whether those businesses are still active by checking company's house and things like that, so that their salespeople can then reach out to people that they've maybe not done business with in a while but are still operating, to see if there's any way that they can support them. Now, if they were to do that process manually, they said that would take on and off about a week or more.
I would say days.
Yeah.
Days.
We were able to write a program that was able to scrape the data that they had and also access company's house to be able to do a live search on these companies and report back whether they were still trading or not. We reduced days worth of data gathering to a couple of hours of coding. And that's kind of the value that we're trying to talk to people about, is that you may have something that you're thinking, oh, this takes forever, or this is a really repetitive task. This is something that I wish I could automate. Okay, well, we might be able to help you with that. We're not selling it. We're not saying this is something that you would then have to take from us. All we're doing is we're saying, okay, we understand the pain points you have. We understand the
Mm.
frustrations that you have. But did you know that AI solutions or automation and machine learning solutions could actually
Mm.
help you achieve that goal relatively easily? Even
Mm.
just down to, instead of spending 3 hours on an evening writing minutes from a Teams meeting that you've had the previous day, like, okay, Microsoft Copilot can produce all of those minutes for you
Yeah.
very easily, can assign task lists and different
Mm.
things like that, all automatically. Like, these
Yeah.
are the values that we're trying to kind of support people with. And this is about having that open and honest conversation. It's
Yeah.
about having that conversation and saying, look, what problems do you have? What pain points do you have?
Yeah.
Where do you feel that you could improve your productivity and efficiency to help you operate better? And, oh,
Yeah.
by the way, here are some of the solutions that you could use to be able to accomplish that. Whether you do it
Yeah.
with us, whether you do it with someone else, that's completely up to you. But if we can give you the information and the education to say, this is how these tools could help,
Mm.
we want you to succeed, this is how you can accomplish that.
Mm. I think sometimes it's about having that external perspective as well,
Yeah.
because having worked for a long time in my ERP day, sort of like supporting people with automation. So before AI, but basically like workflows and stuff like that. You often do things in the way that you were taught to do them within the business. So,
Yeah.
like, when I started working in logistics, I was taught to do things a certain way because that's how the person who done it
Yeah.
before did it. And this kind of embeds in the culture of the business. And sometimes you need an external pair of eyes or several pairs of eyes or a conversation with somebody who's done something slightly differently to say, well, actually, have you thought about doing this? And that's not necessarily, these conversations, these events that we're putting on, it's not like necessarily about us sitting there and going saying, have you thought about? It might be another person, another business sat in
Yeah.
the room who said, well, do you know what, we did this
Yeah.
and it worked really
I've done
well.
this recently. It worked
Yeah.
really well for me. Or I've heard about
Like,
someone who did this solution,
yeah.
or were able to change their operations or their processes
Mm.
to be able to work
Yeah.
better by doing this. It's about bringing like-minded people together from throughout the business
Mm.
community to have
Yeah.
these open and honest discussions. It's not
Yeah.
about us selling things. It's
No.
about us supporting people and educating people
Yeah.
on what they can accomplish.
And I think that fostering that community is really important because it can feel quite a lonely place
Oh
being
yeah.
a business owner. Having, being one, it can feel incredibly lonely, and you're banging your head up against a brick
Yeah.
wall with a problem that actually, if you had a conversation with some other people who were, and it doesn't even have to be like the same industry, like logistics can learn things from manufacturing and vice versa. It doesn't have to be that we all do the same thing, but
Yeah.
sometimes, like I say, that external perspective, that different pair of eyes, that different voice can actually see things that you don't.
Yeah.
And it just takes that spark of imagination, doesn't it, really? If you sort of like, all we want basically is people to come away with some ideas of how they can do this, and whether like I say it is actually right for them, because in some cases it might not
No, it
be
might
that
not be.
AI is the right answer. It might be that we, or you as the business, I think about my own business. I'm not ready to use AI massively in my business
No.
because my data that I generate with my clients is probably not fit for purpose.
No.
So for me, it would be an expensive, in terms of time, exercise that I would not get much out of. That is an entirely likely possibility.
Yeah.
But what we can do is support people to get to the place
Yeah.
where AI maybe is appropriate. It
Yeah.
might be that there is something else that you can use. Like I say, Mike and I were talking about how long we've been doing this. It's terrifying. I don't believe I've been doing it for like 30 odd years or whatever, but there's a lot of experience that, and like I say, other people in the room have got, that if we just talk about it and have a conversation over a sausage stroke bacon butty
Yep.
in the
Bit of
morning,
coffee.
coffee,
Yep.
good conversation. What more can you ask for?
If people do want to sign on to this event, if you are watching through LinkedIn or even through Facebook, because I'm streaming to Facebook at the moment until I can get dual streaming to LinkedIn set up,
Mm-hmm.
I do have a link actually on the post where you can go. There is an Eventbrite there. You can
Mm-hmm.
sign up to be able to join us on that day. there's plenty of spaces left for people to be able to come along. We are sending out individual invites. Hopefully before the end of this week, that same event will also be listed on the Doncaster Chamber members events as well. So you can find it through there if you want to be able to sign up that way. But by all means, come and join us, have a bit of a chat, talk about AI, and just see how you can help improve your overall productivity. I think that kind of wraps up today's show, actually, Sarah. Thank you very much for coming again so very last minute, because we've changed the way that we're going to do things this week. And also, in fact, I've just seen, bless her, she's put the Eventbrite link in the chat. Thank you very much for that, Jordan. So if you want to sign on, she is, yes. If you want to sign on to that event, it is in the chat over on LinkedIn as well. Thank you very much for that. Other than that, there will be no show next week. I am very sorry about that. However, as my title card when we come into the episode and come out of the episodes says, unless AJ has other commitments, my commitment next week is I'm headed over to Doncaster What's Next Business Conference. So I'm going to be in a room with, about 100 people? More? No, way more than that, from across the local business community. Talking about the future of Doncaster, what's coming soon, talk about like developments around the airport, developments around the city centre, and just have a good old natter with people. It sounds like it's going to be a great event. It is going to be a great event this year. We are also there's going to be roundtables involved apparently as well.
Cool.
So really, really, really looking forward to the What's Next Business Conference. And then the following week, to make up for not having a show next week, I am actually going to do a very special show on the Tuesday. It'll be a little bit of a shorter episode. There won't be any cyber news or AI news in that one. But it is because we have a very big announcement that week. So tune in midday, Tuesday the 10th, where we'll be talking about our very big announcement for that week. And then the following day, Tony has said that he won't be doing a charity walk that day. So Tony's going to come on and talk about that as well. And we may see if we can get some other guests involved. So, yes, very excited about these upcoming developments. You will not be able to miss us this year. I can guarantee that.
Actually, speaking about not missing, just a very quick one from me.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to message me about the event, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And also,
Mike, you can see her name. Is it? No, I'm pointing in the wrong direction. You can see her name. It's there. Yeah. It's right there.
You'll find me. I'm connected to AJ, so if you can't find me, find AJ, then find me.
Yeah.
And also, Mike and I are off to the Smart Manufacturing Expo at the NEC on the 5th of June, which is next. Is that next Thursday?
Week tomorrow.
I'm confused by bank holidays. So if anybody's going to that and wants to kind of have a coffee and a chat, give me a shout, drop me a message, because we're going to that to see what's going off in the world of manufacturing.
Awesome. Awesome. Lots of exciting things coming up. Really excited to be able to share the news that we've got coming up in our next show in 2 weeks' time. If anyone wants to join the AI talk, the links are there. Always feel free to drop me a message. I've seen people dropping messages in the comments and direct messages to me on LinkedIn throughout the show as well. But thank you again, Sarah, for joining us. And hopefully everyone is having a great week. I'll catch you later, guys. See ya.